think I wanted to do this partly perversely because I teach an earlier period. And I keep trying to think about what still keeps 19th century novels interesting for contemporary audiences. And so I really wanted to see if through electronic media we could wake up the novels in a different way. That seems to be because the students will be working with them in such a different way and thinking about, instead of being taught a novel, not even teaching themselves, but sort of creating a world around a novel that would provoke new ways of thinking. And so I've really encouraged them, for example, to find neo-Victorian texts that would be interesting to include in their wikis and comment on. One of the wittiest ones I have is I often end the course with the graphic novel League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which pulls in all these Victorian characters. And the person who wrote it, Alan Moore, doesn't let anybody put anything up. You can't use anything of his. And so but he has all these tags that try to replicate Victorian labels, commenting. So they put this hilarious tag up, commenting on why they can't comment on him. And so I mean, part of what's made me happy is seeing with Wiki is seeing the way that they're making these novels their own. Really interesting.
Another course I teach, just to sort of follow what you were saying, is documentary poetics. And the thing about documentary poetics is it's a poetics that doesn't spiral into the poem. It spirals out toward history, photography, other media. And the wiki is perfect for that because people can go out, gather, say, information about the strike at Gawley Bridge, or basically industrial tragedy at Gawley Bridge, and then put the information on the wiki for other people. So they construct a context for the text that we're reading, rather than a professor coming in and kind of playing hide the buttons. What is this about? But they don't.
And this is really sort of the dull part of criticism, but it's gotten exciting because I want these to go public. The first one I did, the university lawyer said, no, you cannot take that and go public because we weren't that attentive to where we were getting resources. Right. And so now, for the first time, my students have a reason to care about plagiarism because they could be arrested. No, they wouldn't. I could be arrested. But it's made them so much more thoughtful about proper intellectual property rights and what's appropriate and how to document. And I can see it translate into their papers when they write because they're so much more aware of what matters and why they wouldn't want their work usurped, once it goes public. So that's really
fascinating. Yeah. So one thing that I'd just like to follow up, because I think it came up both with Dee and Teresa, what you've said, is you mentioned it at the very beginning, is the loss of control. So I guess if you guys could talk briefly about you've mentioned some of the good things that come with this, but the nice things about what I like to term democratizing the classroom. Could you talk about maybe positive and negative instances, if you've had any?
So far I haven't had any negative instances. There are people who are very shy, and pretty soon they realize that the protocols that they know for something like Facebook or MySpace or emailing work pretty well for the wiki. They become extremely comfortable with it, and so the shyness goes away. I haven't had people editing other people's work in a cruel way. I mean, I suppose you could do that, or commenting in a destructive way. That just, it hasn't happened, and I think part of it is because you're not in a hierarchical situation, you're in a rhizomatic or network situation. So there's no reason to undercut anyone. So I so far,
So far.
I haven't had trouble.
And actually, another of the ways I got interested in this is because I'm, as Bridget knows, also interested in publicly engaged scholarship and teaching. And so I've done some service learning classes, but also classes that just students do a project with community partners, and so they take the work out to the public and know that it's going to be received, staged before the public in one way or another. And so because I've started with the premise that this will go public, they're really producing the wiki, thinking of themselves as in a community, and that really changes their sense. So it's in some ways it's a little bit different instead of being so engaged with each other. And I like a lot about what Dee's describing, because it sounds like it's a much more maybe active, relationship in a way on the wiki, and I want to think about that. But on the other hand, I like the publicness that they have in mind, because they really start to think about their work not as an assignment, but as how they want to represent out interesting ideas. And we talk about other Victorian classes, but also how a high school teacher could use it, how a college teacher. So that really affects both their motivation and pride, and attention to their work, but also it just situates it really differently than a paper privately written to me, which they also do.